Good afternoon, everyone. I'm concerned that we are thinking in this day and age too incrementally. And if you think about it and look over history, in terms of energy transition, in terms of transportation, there have always been inflection points punctuated by shifts in the way we move that have been transformational. From the simple migration from walking on all fours to 2 feet, to riding horses, to hitching carriages to the back of them, to ships, to railways, to trams and buses, and of course in my industry to aeroplanes, that's always been quite transformational. And the pace of change has been very, very fast, and it's quickening. And now we may well be at an inflection point, which may be that the current way that we move around is no longer sustainable. The rate of change in the speed of travel has no longer followed that sort of Moore's law principle. It's no longer affordable or sustainable to go ever faster. It's costly, it's energy inefficient. Look at Concorde. And in the UK, HS2, which has ballooned from £55 billion project in 2015 to £106 billion in 2020, which is double the cost in 5 years. And the challenge of speed and sustainability is actually limited by the need to carry the fuel that we do in the air on aeroplanes. For every 10 tons of fuel that's carried aloft, 2 tons is actually burnt to carry the remaining 8. And nothing is as calorifically dense as a litre of jet A1. And a step change in aerial propulsion is absolutely necessary if we're ever going to be able to make air travel sustainable in the long term. But this is going to take years and years. And the current technology at the moment is pretty inefficient. The idea that we start an air journey on the ground at many different locations and solely for the convenience of lazy airport operators like myself, we converge everyone into single points of misery and then dissipate them out to multiple points of arrival, there's something wrong with that model. We should be using new developments in technology the way Uber and Amazon have completely transformed the whole idea of the retail industry and the taxi industry. Instead of scores and scores of discrete journeys, they're now joined together in a network and made so much more efficient. And companies like Amazon have taken the retail model and completely dissolved and reassembled the whole supply chain to consumer in a more logical way. Isn't it time we did that with transportation? And instead of thinking incrementally about bigger airports, which mean longer walking distances, greater centres of concentration, bigger queues, I'd like to hand the monopoly on queuing back from the airport to the post office where it belongs. So we have to go back to basics. Instead of growing existing modes of transportation in our connected world, surely there's a better way of managing a multimodal integrated transport solution for the planet, which would be more logical than the ways that we travel at the moment. And an airport at its very base level is simply a place where we translate a mode of transport from the ground to the air. And whilst technical innovation to make travel in the air more sustainable continues apace, I just wonder if it is time to take a fresh look at that transition and what's required. Mass transport has always had the same fundamental characteristics. Start with individuals leaving multiple points of origin, congregating at a central place and then dissipating again and then reversed at the other end. And currently, the most effective, but all the more challenging, is the building of infrastructure, more roads, more railways and airports, is incredibly expensive. It takes time, it takes space. And now there are huge political and environmental challenges to airports in developed countries being constantly expanded. And unfortunately, I think it's probably true, and there's probably plenty of people who've experienced this, mass transport and mass human misery often go hand in hand. And the efficient use of our transport infrastructure, I think, is made worse by the way we use our time. We're ruled by two basic human qualities. The first is that communication has always been something that's required co-location. And of course, technology has completely broken that down now. And people had to be in the same place to get stuff done. And of course, the pattern of, work, eat, sleep, for as long as our planet has revolved at 1,000 miles an hour for the whole 24,000 miles of its circumference, we've been bound to this cycle of regular 24-hour patterns. And our travel patterns have also become habitual as a result. So the changes in that cycle, I think, have been brought about by what technology can enable. And it's started to explode that myth that we have to be creatures of habit. So the transformation in how we interact and communicate as an alternative to the ashen-faced commuter on the 0643 train is becoming possible, and an attractive alternative. And the myth that we can only communicate effectively when we are physically co-located is starting to disappear. So the miracle of modern technology is disrupting that pattern. And as I've said, Amazon, Uber, and eBay are just three examples of disruptive businesses who've become very successful because they have changed completely the fundamental business model. And aggregators of mass transport such as Uber and Lyft have been equally transformative by transforming thousands of individual transport solutions into a more effective network. Instead of scouring the streets for a taxi, you can actually join in a network that makes the whole thing more affordable and more efficient. But for me, there was a Eureka moment, and I think the moment that I had may introduce us to a different way of thinking about transportation. So I'd like to share with you a bit of a personal story, a quite unusual one, but it was a Eureka moment. A few years ago, I was on holiday with my family down in the southwest of England. And I was asked to go and give a lecture to some students in a city a few hundred miles away. So I booked my ticket from my local airport and drove there for the day of the lecture, only to be told that the flight was going to be delayed for more than 4 hours. Disaster. I missed the lecture. Now, as an aside, the airline went bust a few months later, and I did not shed too many tears. So what did I do? I had to jump into my car and speed up the motorway like a bit of a maniac for a nerve-wracking 5-hour journey. Just about made the lecture. And then, once the lecture had been finished, problem solved? No. Unfortunately, the problem had only just begun. I was now in the city with my return flight booked, but had my car with me. And I further problem, it was the last day of term in summer. And on the M5 where I was, every single occupant that had a student that was finishing school that day seemed to be heading for the M5 to go back to where I needed to be. And I'm sure anyone familiar with the M5 in the UK will know that at holiday times it's not a great place to be. And so it was going to take me absolutely hours to sit in traffic and rejoin my family. So instead of battling the traffic, I did exactly the opposite. I went to sleep for 8 hours, for a full night's rest. Then I got in my car at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I drove nearly 300 miles on what had been the busiest night of the year without encountering a single traffic queue, arriving at my destination just as the sun was rising. It was a perfect journey. So it sort of was a light bulb moment for me. we have a hurdle to overcome here, and that is the need for humans to sleep, which restricts our ability to use our transport systems effectively. But instead of trying to change human behavior, what if we change the way we need human interaction in mass transportation? There's got to be a better way. So we already have the technology to operate mass transportation without a human at the wheel. And actually, if you look at driverless cars, the statistics on their safety is far outstripping the danger of having a human at the wheel. So if it's already past that threshold of being safer, and if vehicles can be developed to travel autonomously, and in parallel we can evolve them into a hotel room on wheels, we could soon all be traveling long distances overnight whilst we sleep in comfort and safety. And the benefits of the creation of a network that operates 24/7 without humans behind the wheel would be safer, more efficient, and more cost-effective for us to move around. The vehicles would operate as a network commodity, and we would no longer tie up the estimated, in the US alone, more than 278 million vehicles at an average cost of ownership of $10,000 each per annum. Americans apparently are spending something like $3 trillion of their personal income on personal transportation. Imagine if all that invested capital would be freed up and pay-per-use was the norm. So I think there is a different way to actually look at a completely different network, a safer network, something that actually is going to be a much better way to travel in the future. And the enormous benefits of that will be plain for everyone to see. If you think about it, something like 45% of all air journeys are undertaken over distances that could be covered during the course of a night's sleep. And if we could actually power that mass transportation network using sustainable fuel over distances that are, say, 500 miles, which could be comfortably achieved during the night and sleep at the same time, just think at the hotel rooms that we would save. Just think of the impact on the environment that we could make. And if it was a completely sustainable technology using green energy and we could replace flying over short distances, that would get us a lot further, a lot quicker than having to rely on sustainable aviation fuel, which is only being produced at a rate of about 0.1 of the actual demand. The demand for Jet A1 is outstripping the ability of sustainable aviation fuel to supply that demand. And it would also bring more and more airports within easy reach of road-based transportation systems. So the infrastructure that we have could be used more effectively and efficiently if we could access it by road more easily. And the future of global mobility could be totally transformed if we looked at using existing assets a lot better. And it could be transformed from the crowded, unpleasant, and stressful nature of that mass transportation journey that we experience today. No more queues, no more traffic jams, no more exposure to weather or environments that are harsh and unwelcoming. So the technology is here to make mobility more cost-effective and enjoyable. And whilst we'll continue to do our best in the aviation industry to make journeys more pleasant, actually we have the capability to make that one-to-one mass transportation relationship far more sustainable and pleasant. So we need to work out how to manage the transition towards making every single journey a more pleasant and uncluttered personal experience. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think we have time for one or two questions.
We certainly do.
Please.
From Portugal. I think it was very interesting, and I congratulate because I use it a lot Dubai Airport to go to China and to Indonesia. But I think this is a very interesting but very complicated. Okay, because after all, if everybody goes by this mobile, without driver and so on, you'll have a queue of them, and nothing can be wrong, because if when suddenly the switch goes off because of power, because you have problem with the electrical things, then you may have a problem. Okay, so I know, of course, technically speaking, you can do it. By the way, another thing, airplanes with electrical airplanes. What do you think about it? Do you think it's going to happen?
Right, two good questions there. The first thing, the transformation away from putting the decision point into the hands of the driver of every single individual vehicle, I think actually that's a far bigger congestion problem, because the way you avoid congestion is by order, and it's by actually creating, and if you use Google Maps, that's a crowd data funded method of eliminating the problem of individual decisions. So actually, I would disagree with you on the network point. I think if we had a network of vehicles, it would be possible in real time, like we do with aeroplanes and airport gates and things, to reroute those journeys around trouble spots. So if there was a failure in the system, the network could be directing vehicles. And if we were all comfortably asleep or watching movies inside our autonomous vehicles in the back, we would be oblivious to the route that these vehicles were taking. So I think that network idea, as we've seen with the huge efficiency with Uber, which is a very first step on that particular journey towards a completely autonomous network of vehicles, I think that there are transition challenges, but I think it could be a vision of the future that would be very good for us. Electrical aircraft, the problem is we have to take our fuel with us. And you'll know from electric vehicles that batteries at the moment are incredibly heavy. And the problem is an aircraft is designed to burn fuel and lose weight during the course of its flight. And it cannot land with the same weight at which it's taken off. And of course, an exhausted battery weighs exactly the same as a fully charged battery. So the energy density of the fuel with electricity at the moment just isn't there to create a meaningful payload. There are some large drones now. We're looking at vertiports here in Dubai, but the payload restriction at the moment, because that technology is at a very early stage, are very severe. It will come, I think, but it needs a huge change in the portable and weight-effective sources of propulsion. That needs to happen. So thank you.